Well, as you can see, and I'm pleased to say we're joined now by the Work and Pensions Secretary, Thérèse Coffey.
Good morning.
Lovely to see you this morning. And I understand that Rwanda is away from your brief, which we will be spending a few minutes on, but we must start with Rwanda. I mean, who could have guessed that the first flight to Rwanda would not have taken off? Well, frankly, pretty much everyone, bar the government. So what happens now?
Well, the government was expected a lot of legal challenges, and we went through the British courts who gave the go-ahead for this flight to happen, despite the challenges that happened. So I think, frankly, the government is disappointed in the decision. I've never known such a quick decision made by somebody, the ECHR, on this, trying to intervene. And I think the public will be surprised that we have European judges overruling British judges. But nevertheless, I know the Home Office is already getting ready for the next flight. And, we will continue to prepare and try and overturn any future legal challenges as well.
Do you think that the amount of money that we will have spent on this flight, a flight which didn't take off, which will undoubtedly run into the six figures, it must run into the six figures, do you still maintain that this was money well spent?
Well, I know that we spend millions of pounds a day on a broken asylum system. What I do know is that the priority for the government is to make sure that safe legal routes are prioritised and that we try and do whatever we can through deterring illegal, unsafe routes, because the only people that profit are the smugglers who, frankly, push people out into boats and don't care if they arrive or not.
So when will we get this next flight? When are we anticipating seeing perhaps a repeat of the scenes we saw yesterday?
Well, it's for the Home Office to focus on their operational matters. I'm not sure it's something I particularly want to broadcast, but nevertheless, preparations are underway and I'm confident that the Home Secretary, Priti, will be working with her team to take the next steps that are appropriate.
Days or weeks? I mean, you can give us a rough ballpark, surely.
I'm not going to get into operational disclosures. Just
in terms, though, of the embarrassment, and it clearly is an embarrassment for the government. We began the week with 130 packs supposed to be on this flight. We went down to 7, and now no one has been able to leave. Again, I reiterate this point. Given that everyone, apart from the government, could see this coming, do you still maintain that this was value for money?
I do maintain it's value for money, and anything we can do to deter people being put in the hands of people smugglers is efforts that are well deserved in terms of making sure that we try and stop that and get people towards safe legal routes. This is an unsafe thing to be doing, to pushing people out into the Channel. We know that's the case. We know that's the case of traffickers actually in all parts of the world. But nevertheless, this got through British courts through the legal challenges. And as I say, we're surprised and disappointed that the European judges have overturned that.
I mean, is there, you mentioned deterrence. I mean, is there any evidence that this has yet had any kind of deterrent effect? I mean, figures vary. We ourselves counted, and you can see the pictures there, 260 people coming over the Channel yesterday. Will probably have been significantly more than that. Clearly, the prospect of being deported to Rwanda, it's not having a deterrent effect.
Well, I do believe that we will start to see that as flights start to take off. The government is resolved to making sure that we do whatever we can to stop illegal, unsafe routes of immigration into this country, and that's why we'll continue to make every effort we can.
What are the safe routes?
Well, there are a number of safe routes where people, not only through talent, but also through working with UN in different parts of the country.
So that's it. So it's basically, unless you can find a UN representative to assist you getting to this country, or you qualify under the points scheme, you can't claim asylum in this country.
Well, the point is that when people do come into the country legally, of course, they can claim asylum when they are...
Again, I'm asking, how do you get into the country legally if you're coming here to seek asylum and you don't have permission to enter?
You'll be aware there are a number of countries that people are already in where they can apply for asylum.
I'm not asking about them, I'm asking about the UK.
And I'm saying to you about in terms of the different things that we have done. Look, we have a track record as a country of offering places of refuge and asylum to people from around the world. We're already undertaken that significantly, most recently with the Afghan resettlement scheme, but also things like with Hong Kong and British nationals overseas there. So there's a number of routes that we have already taken which are safe, legal, and we will continue to stand by that track record, but do whatever we can to deter the unsafe, illegal routes of trying to get into this country.
But still, and again, I hate to labour this point, the majority of people who come across in small boats are successful in their asylum claims here. Under your scheme, anyone who arrives here illegally could risk being sent to Rwanda. I don't know how you square that circle.
Well, because we're trying to stop illegal, unsafe routes. And it is the unsafe routes, the routes that are illegal, and we are having this perfectly sensible partnership with Rwanda. I mean, the Commonwealth heads of government will be meeting there, I think, next week. This is not like it's some country that isn't a modern democracy. This is about a partnership which was established by the Home Secretary, and it's one that we believe is a good way to proceed with this unsafe, illegal routes, people being put at risk in order to get into this country.
I mean, I have heard Rwanda being characterised in this way at the same time until at least very relatively recently, if it's not the case this morning. The FCDO were warning against gay Britons travelling to Rwanda. So I'm not entirely certain that everyone is sanguine with it. But just in terms of how you proceed from all of this, clearly this government has an issue with the European Convention on Human Rights and indeed the European Court on Human Rights. Asked about withdrawing from both, the Prime Minister said it may very well be necessary to change the law. I mean, would you really countenance withdrawing ourselves from the convention that was set up after the atrocities of the Second World War?
Well, I think that we have never put that, as far as I'm aware, in our manifesto, or certainly the 2019
Just the Prime Minister
manifesto.
saying it yesterday.
But I think it's just, as we have done before, where we've gone into court with the ECHR, a number of issues, and judgments have been made in favour of the government. You know, we are a law-abiding government, and I'm absolutely sure that, frankly, we will get to any future discussions about that. But right now, I'm not aware of any decisions or hints even about that. The most important thing is that we tackle this issue right now. We'll go back, I'm sure, to the ECHR to challenge this initial ruling. And because, as I say, British judges have made the decision, said that these flights could go ahead. And I still think that's the best thing that can happen.
See, I could get this government complaining about the European Convention and indeed ECHR oversight of our legal system if this was just a legacy document that we signed up to in 1950. But the fact of the matter is, back when you were drafting the political declaration that sorted out our relationship between the UK and the European Union, you put the Convention on Human Rights at the very heart of it. I mean, here is the political declaration here. On page 2 of it, the future relationship between UK and EU should incorporate the UK's continuing commitment to respect the framework of the European Convention on Human Rights. It goes far further than that. Later on in the document,
I'm not really sure the point you're making. The idea the 2019 manifesto...
The idea that you're maintaining that it is an unforeseen consequence of giving the European Court oversight of our legal system, that the European Court exercises its oversight of our legal system. You signed up to it 3 years ago. Well, in fact, you said it should be under... Just let me read this. The parties, the UK and the EU, agree that the scale and scope of future arrangements should be underpinned by long-standing commitments to the fundamental rights of individuals, including continued adherence and giving effect to the ECHR. I mean, you can't complain about something you yourself signed up to.
No, I'm not complaining in the slightest. Our own British judges are bound by the Convention on Human Rights. That's why I think we were surprised the ECHR, as I say, the quickest decision I've ever experienced as a minister, made the decision last night
Is the ECHR superior to the UK domestic legal system?
It's a different approach that's taken. That's why my Home Office colleagues, the Home Secretary, will be taking steps to look into the impact of that. Nevertheless, British judges made that decision, made that ruling, and that's why we will be preparing for the next flight. But I think the whole ECHR is just a surprise and a disappointment, as I say,
How could it be a surprise if the ECHR has oversight of our legal system? I just don't get it.
Niall, it's a different situation. It's a specific thing about human rights. It's a surprise at the decision that they reached, and that's why our lawyers in the Home Office will be continuing to work on that. And it's why our Home Office will be continuing to prepare for their next flights.
What level of confidence do you have, then, that the next flight will, unlike yesterday, take off?
I'm highly confident. This decision was made at rapid pace yesterday, and as a consequence, it's right that the government continues to try and make sure that we deter unsafe, illegal routes of asylum, people trying to enter the country, because the only people that benefit are unscrupulous people traffickers, often trying to put people into modern slavery as well. So there's a number of different things there. But of course, at the same time, we also want to make sure that we continue to focus on the rest of the government, as we are trying to do today, as we're introducing legislation into Parliament to help us be able to process and make those payments to help nearly 8 million households with the cost of living.
Let's talk indeed about the cost of living. That is on your brief today, and we now have a timetable for the payment of the £650. Just give us a bit of detail on that. When can people expect to get that much-needed assistance?
So in terms of people who will have already had £150, or the majority, I think it's about 80% of households will have already had £150 of council tax rebate. What they'll be seeing through the payments is next month, they'll be getting half of the £650 payment. Those people on benefits, indeed, although people on tax credits have to wait a little bit longer because we don't want to duplicate payments, and then we'll be making more payments later in the year. So that's people, not only the second half of the £650, but also pensioners will get an extra £300 alongside their winter fuel payment, and people with disabilities will get a £150 payment as well.
Can we talk then just briefly about benefits? And I know that you're up in front of the Work and Pensions Committee next week, but when you're in front of the Liaison Committee, you were asked whether or not this government would look at, some kind of general uplift in terms of benefits, in terms of legacy payments. I mean, you said you'd go away and have a look at it and see if it could be done in a cost-neutral way. Is this something the government is looking at some form of increase to the benefit system before, I think it's April next year, when the next when it would next be looked at?
So I'm looking. I haven't appeared in front of the Liaison Committee, so maybe somebody else has. I mean, we have looked carefully. This is the way, through the legislation we're doing today, to give us the powers to make these payments. We're doing it at pace, so people will get money next month. At the same time, about 70% of working families will benefit from the uplift in the national insurance threshold, which on average I think will save families an extra £350. So I think it's not a case of looking at rates of individual benefits, but by using these interventions for the one-off payments is something that we are mobilising as quickly as we can.
Totally. And I get that there are a lot of other ways in which this government is trying to help. But why is it? We obviously understand that since we lost that £20 uplift to universal credit, in real terms, benefits are at the lowest for some estimate, for 30 years. Why is this government so reticent to look at just a general, across-the-board rise to that one universal payment that was meant to simplify the benefit system? Well,
we did do an uplift because I do
a permanent one,
I do an uprating every year. Well, it rose, and we used the inflation rate that was the index we've always used. But of course, my department is really focused as well on those people who can work, to get them into work. And we have seen a record number of people getting into work in the last few months, very high, hundreds of thousands of people. And at the same time, we have 1.3 million vacancies, and we are trying to do what we can to help people get into work, because that is definitely the best way, of course, to boost somebody's income.
We will see you at the Work and Pensions Committee next week, and we'll hopefully see you in the studio soon. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Noel.